Good morning. Oh, the microphone's off again. We have a little technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. Just 1 second, please. All right, here we go. Oh, there it goes. All right, Kim, we got maybe, possibly. Well, everybody, just in case, this is a Secure Nation Criticality live podcast. I am Chip Harris. Kim is getting her microphone set up right now. And she's like, maybe.
Go on. Oh, wait. Okay, so it was off in the software, but it was on the hardware.
There we go.
It's set up. I got it muted. So it is what I was saying is it is technically afternoon in Toronto.
Well, there you go. I always do good morning, afternoon, and good day, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. We cover all the bases. So how are you, Kim? How are things in the Great White North of Canada?
Well, all I can think about is next week Power Wash Simulator 2 comes out. So
there you go. There is nothing better than pressure washing something in a simulator game. That's completely awesome. I love it. So yes, things have been going well for me. Look at what I got.
There you go.
So shameless plug here, ladies and gentlemen. My book is now officially in paperback. So you can actually order this through Amazon, and it's me talking about the cyber war on critical infrastructure, some of the stuff that we actually talk about in this podcast, and this week has been very busy dealing with Russians. Gotta love them. Gotta love them. It's been insane. Starting Sunday, there was a huge campaign against that the Russians have actually launched against OT systems here in the United States, and it has kind of come to a head. And it is not looking good for us, on the IT and the OT side, because we got whacked, and we got whacked pretty bad. There were rolling blackouts that started from California all the way to New York and New Jersey.
Wow.
So it has been it's been rough, and I've yelled, screamed, hoot, and hollered about this for long periods of time. And as I tell people, I was like, they do these little dress rehearsals, kind of remind us, like, hey, how vulnerable, we are versus how vulnerable you are, and then so forth. And China doesn't play, considering that, in the political world, we have raised tariffs on them here in the United States, which is been raised to 100%. So they had a kind of like knee jerk reaction, like, hey, let's take a look and see what we can do to make sure they know who's actually, at the table here, and kind of hit us. So actually affected my area as well down here in the South. We get a lot of our electricity from Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. And most people that work in the power industry and whatnot understand that, there's five major power grids. And then if you want to really say Texas is six, because I mean, it's its own grid because it's so freaking big. And I love when my friends from Europe come over, or you come down from Canada, and they say, oh, we're going to drive from like Atlanta over to Las Vegas, tomorrow. And I'm like, in 1 day. And I'm like, y'all don't know how big Texas is, do you? I mean, you can drive all day through Texas and still be in Texas. So they don't understand, the topology, and how big the United States actually is, when they start caring about, like, dude, that's like a 3 or 4 day trip. You can't do that in an afternoon.
Okay, but Ontario is probably larger land area than Texas.
Oh yeah.
It would probably take, I think I've done it. It would probably take over 24 hours to drive from Toronto, Ontario to Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Wow. So like if you had to drive like to the Yukon, like the other side of of
multiple days.
That's yeah, I was say like that's gonna take you like what, a week, to get to the Yukon.
At least. One thing that I don't talk about very much, my mother was 8 months pregnant when she drove from Toronto to around Vancouver, BC. So I was born near Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Uh-huh.
She's like 8 months pregnant. She did the drive all the way from here to there, to the other side of the country. And yet it took her like 4 or 5 days of driving and staying in motels
Wow.
on the
That
way.
is
Also, you're kind of batshit for being an 8 months pregnant woman doing that.
that's crazy. I mean, that's
I
nuts.
mean, what if I came early? What if the
Yeah.
water broke while she was in the middle of nowhere on a
Yeah,
highway?
it's like you're out in the middle, like that's like Texas. You're out in the middle of the desert. I mean, there's nothing for hundreds of miles around you, or minimum, because I tell people that want to drive from like even Austin to Dallas, I'm like, have fun with traffic, because I mean, you're still looking at 4 to 6 hours minimum, of just driving through traffic and whatnot. But yeah.
Fetus me told her she was batshit.
Yeah, I was like, that's crazy. That's pretty fucking nuts. As I tell people, because I have some friends from England that came over. They wanted to come visit me. They're like, yeah, we're in Atlanta. We want to come see in your state. And I'm like, okay, that'll be about 4 to 6 hours. Driving. With your rental across 2 states. So they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, look, if you pull it up on Google Maps, and they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, now they get it. So. But yeah, China this past week and weekend has had fuckery abound, as I tell people. I mean, they have really hit local, and national power grids, kind of flickering the lights a little bit, as I tell people.
I guess you're unofficially in Cold War II now.
Yeah, Cold War II is kind of what I tell people. The Russians and the Chinese, have been doing this for a long periods of time, and China's really good at it. They've gotten really good at hitting water systems, and hitting critical infrastructure. Not necessarily mostly. Sometimes the defense industry, but as I tell people, about the red dragons in China, is that their key thing, is if they can't make it and they can't copy it, they're going to steal it. So that's one of their things. And they have a 3, 5, 7 year, 10 year plan. And if you interfere with that, they interfere with you. So yeah, Cold War II, I would not necessarily say not only is against the bears, but it's also against the pandas, and it's getting pretty heated. And I was talking with the people that I report to, and I'm like going, look, we're not ready for this. We are not. Our infrastructure is so screwed, right now. It's so old and outdated. We are 30 years behind where we should have been, if we started right now with all hands on deck. I mean, it would still take us multiple years to get stuff, rolled out. And then on top of that, by the time we get it rolled out, it's time to start updating, patching, and rolling out new stuff again. So, that's the unofficial way, as I tell people, of how some of these things actually work. So it's like, yay, we got it done. All right, now we need to start planning for the next 5 to 7 years, and then how we're going to be able to do that. So it's been very interesting to kind of see how some of these things kind of play out, in the government sector. But, our government right now is kind of shut down. And I want to talk to, that issue later on today, during the shows, because we're starting to see the ripple effects,
So
throughout.
you're in a losing position, but today's guest is a victor. It's
Yeah,
all about victory and stuff.
yeah, he's the winning part of the end. I'm kind of the losing end of the stick. So, as I've always said, winners concentrate on winning. Losers concentrate on the winners. So, as I tell people, especially in this industry and everything, it's always have somebody good to look up to. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I remember those days very well of
There he
the
is.
super hackers that we used to look up to and everything, and then you just figure out, hey, they're just real people like everybody else.
I love your shirt, and that is a
Dude, I
proper
am digging that. Where is the surfboard in there you go.
There we go. There we
There
go.
we
As
go.
obnoxious as possible. There we go.
Oh, dude, like we need to have some coconut drinks and some tiki torches and some
Well, the drinks are good. The drinks are good.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
we're
we
good.
are highly caffeinated, trust me.
Yeah. I don't think I actually drink water. I just have that, and I just inject it into my blood.
Water makes
I
coffee.
agree. Water is overrated.
Yeah.
They got energy drinks that have like so.
See, as I tell people, it takes water to make this stuff. So guess what? It's still a win-win situation for me. I'm staying hydrated and caffeinated at the same time.
Have you ever seen that meme that says, I use Red Bull instead of water in my coffee? I can now see noises.
Oh,
if you put Red Bull into the liquid cooling in a PC, does that overclock the CPU?
Oh no, we might want to try that. I got my lab over here. I could break that out. I'll get a couple Red Bulls, pour them in there, see what happens. See if it drops. Wow, the CPU went up and the cooling went down. I mean, that'd be very interesting to kind of see, Kim. Either that or there's going to be an explosion, one or the other.
So I find your background to be very relatable, because even if you're a bit older than me, we've taken kind of a vaguely similar path, like from PC technician to general IT stuff and then into cybersecurity.
Yeah. I have been in this industry for a long time. It's interesting. I was actually on my second job working at Blue Cross Blue Shield when they brought in this newfangled thing called DHCP.
Oh yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, that's the kind of how old I am and how long I've been doing this. Of course, back then I was just in IT. I wasn't working in cybersecurity, though. I didn't start in cybersecurity until about 2008.
Still, that's like 17 years.
Yeah, 17 years, and then another 15 years in IT before that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the days that when we had DSL modems, and we got T1 lines, and I was like, dude, this is the shit. Yep. We have hit it. I mean, this is the jackpot. We are officially off modems forever. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like going, I couldn't, and now that's laughable. When we look at those speeds. But I mean, people don't realize, when we had, because I was a bench technician at CompUSA, so it's like, I was just like I was in the thick of it, and we were building our own PCs, and whatnot. And it's kind of good to have that hands-on kind of feel, and I tell people, if you've been doing this as long as we have, everybody on this thing, you got to pay your dues, and it's really awesome to talk to people that have like been there, seen that, when you got these kids that are graduating today that think they're, entitled to a six-figure salary, and they haven't been doing this 5 years. And
well, it's funny. It's funny because you talk about that. For one thing, I was your competitor. I was a bench tech at Computer City back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But in 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, on the 30th, I will be actually flying up to the University of Michigan to talk at their cybersecurity symposium about the challenges of training brand new cybersecurity professional.
Boom.
And that point that you just made with the six-figure salary is, I believe, on slide 2 or 3 for me.
Yeah, I tell people it's like, I'm a government military contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's on fucking hold for us right now. So there's a lot of people looking for work. And, I tell students and I tell people that, and Kim does this as well. And everybody that's on this channel, I wrote a book, and I dedicated a whole chapter to like, this is what's going to happen in the real world when you graduate. You just have a sheet of paper that says you know what the hell it is you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the keyboard and click time like most of us have had, which we're now considered the dirty old wizards of the internet. I mean, like we were there when it all began, right?
Yep.
So, I'm 48 years old. I've been doing this professionally since 94, and I have no problem telling that to people. It's like, you've been doing this 5 years. And if I threw you into a SOC, which that's probably the role that you're going to get if you're really damn good, and not, having to have something gifted to you, which basically is setting you up to fail, and if you're doing it in the OT space, it's even worse than the IT space because there's more risk involved and more vulnerability, because then you can hurt people or, blow stuff up and, oh, wow, I accidentally double clicked on something that caused a nuclear reactor to overheat because it cut off the water supply. So, yeah, I mean, there's risk that's involved with all of the stuff that we do. Mm-hmm. But as I tell students, it's like, you're not going to get this grandioso, CISO job or C-level job with 5 years experience. If they do give that to you, they're setting you up to fail, and you're going to be the fall guy for something that went horribly wrong, and they
Yep.
can use you as the blame game. But it's like, if I put you in a cubicle, or I put you into a sock, or I put you into a hyper situation, you either focus or fold, or two, you literally have the CIO or the CTO show up and say, hey, we've been hacked. You've got 15 minutes to start pulling log information, getting us, onto a call. Within about 10 to 15 minutes, you need to talk to this group, this group, this group, this group, start finding out firewall things, blah, 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 right? They start rattling off all this stuff.
Mhm.
And if you don't know what to do, keystroke wise, and what your applications in your environment is, you're literally going to be sucking your thumb, shitting yourself, sitting in your cubicle, laying on the floor in the fetal position. Have
Yep.
no problem telling people that.
That's quite an illustration.
Yeah,
I
it's
actually
true.
do the same thing with the students. Is that I always say is that, you know what, knowing things like the framework, like the 6 phases of incident response, that's good. That's a bonus, but you have to have those hands-on keyboard skills. And when we go through these labs, for example, we go through a lab with cyber threat intelligence. It's a super cool lab. That is not something we're going to expect you to do on your first year. What we're going to
Yeah.
yeah. Well, what we're going to expect you on your first year is writing detections, learning how to react to those detections. And I said, at a minimum, you need to do every single lab, and you can apply this to Try Hack Me or whatever else you're doing. You need to do about a minimum of 3 times, and you got to have a good notebook.
Yeah.
I press very, very hard to having a notebook. And I tell them, look, there's nothing wrong being in an interview, being in a SOC, to pull out your notebook and start reading from it. Because we don't have to memorize things.
Yeah, my team, if you're not taking notes, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Real wrong.
Yes.
And one of the first things, because I wrote the cybersecurity program for IT and OT response for the University of Arizona. I wrote a textbook, and it was fun. I wrote the labs, worked with the administration, whatnot. And it's their in-house, like first off, the first thing I told them, like, do these guys know how to use Wireshark? They're like, no. And I'm like, okay, we got to fix that,
Mm-hmm.
And I went down the list of stuff that, what you see in the industry, that's the real hands-on stuff. And Kim's even wrote about this, in her books, and stuff, it makes a big difference when you know what they're asking for you to do, and you know what tools and packages that you can use to accomplish those things in an easy, simple way that are not overcomplicated, And it's like I tell people, it's the flavor of what you learned on. But it's like, I forced Kali Linux down their throat. I forced Linux down their throat. And this is how you use these tools to do these things, because that's what you're going to be asked for in the real world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody uses a different SIM. Everybody uses a different OT system. I mean, whether it be Rockwell Automation, whether it be, if you're a Siemens lab, or a Siemens customer, there's tons of different vendors that are out there that use different stuff. But the premise is still all the same.
Yeah. And again, I totally agree with you, right? And I think the biggest thing, though, is not just about using the tools, but knowing what the results are. And instead of concentrating on, well, everything inside Kali Linux, focus on 3 different tools.
Yep.
You better know Nmap back and forth.
Right.
And you better know the results of Nmap. I mean, you know this, and Kim knows this as well as I do. We can teach the basics of how to launch Nmap in 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
But we can spend the next 3 hours working on the results and what do they tell you to do.
All right.
Yeah.
How do you know which ports are, like, why do you need all these ports open? That's even in the environment that I work with today, with the government clients, and private clients. It's like, your shit is flat. You have like all these ports open.
Mm-hmm.
You only need like 6, maybe, like you need 8080, 80, 443, probably 22, and a couple others, depending on what your environment is. But that's about it. Everything else needs to be, disallowed, not approved, can't use. And if you need to poke a hole in the network, you've got to have a really damn good excuse, the reasons why you're doing it, And like our firewall team, they are Nazis. They don't let this. Everything is basically in the whole bullshit of zero trust. No such thing. No such thing.
Yeah.
Right? We all, every hacker will tell you there's always vulnerability.
Well,
Sometimes
talking about Nmap again, Frank,
Yeah.
have you ever sat in an airport terminal and
Oh.
pulled your laptop out and they give you like one kind of free public Wi-Fi or whatever, use Nmap on that and see what it looks like?
Oh yeah, but have you ever done that? I've actually done that on a plane and just did not net view on a command prompt and seeing everybody's computer names on there.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm on a plane. I'm in the air. Let's not mess with this. But
Yeah.
not a good thing. But that scares the heck out of you. And I at the time I had a friend that was an air marshal, and I let him know, and I think he passed on the information. I don't think any things happened from it though. And not that it was a vulnerability. Maybe it was nothing, but being able to see other people's computers.
Right? Oh, I loved launching OWASP Zap in the airport. Love it. Yeah. Oh, it's the best. And there's old programs out there like NetStumbler that are still, that are still out there today for us old school folks that still use this stuff for counterintelligence and counter surveillance. The tradecraft has not changed.
No.
The tools have,
which is very intuitive. One of the most intuitive phone scanners I've ever used.
Oh yeah.
But you are an OWASP volunteer. That's what makes me think of Segway-wise.
Yeah, I'm actually the
volunteer. That right?
Well, I'm actually the VP of the Denver office of the Denver OWASP, and possibly moving into the president position as of last night.
Oh wow!
Well, congratulations.
Well,
I love your program more than Burp Suite.
So that's not really a volunteer position. You are a person who works for a nonprofit with a salary.
No, my salary. I've been doing this for about 10 years now. The most I've ever been paid, as I like to say, is $250, and that is all before the decimal point. Because at my last OWASP meeting, I found a quarter on the ground.
Oh wow!
Awesome.
So I've never actually been paid anything with OWASP, and we are running conferences. We have our conference Snowfrock 2026 that's just spinning up, a 2-day conference for the first time. We'll have some great workshops. Tanya Janke, right, from She Hacks Purple, she has agreed to be our keynote speaker.
Well, that's cool. I don't get out of the house much. They don't let me, the government doesn't let me out a lot. I was supposed to go to GERCON and they shot that down. I was supposed to go to a lot of these conventions and they're like, because I've been working undercover, for the past 7 years. So that, they don't like it when I start roaming around, because they know when hackers get together and they get bored, things get dangerous. Very dangerous.
Agreed.
And I love OWASP. I've been a big fan of it because like Burp Suite was such a pain in the ass because you got to set up a proxy here and then a proxy there, and you got to go through all these settings. And it's like, can't I just turn a program on and just put what I need in and click and like make it magically happen? And I'm like, hey, y'all need to look at that my team was like going, and oh yeah, by the way, it's a lot cheaper than what we're paying for. And they're like going, what do you mean? I was like, look at the results. And we did a bake off and I showed them like, this is way better and cheaper to use than what you're using, here that you're paying buku's amount of money on. So as I tell people, it's one of those things, especially in education, it's like, these are the industry standard tools that you need to learn and how to read them, and how to give output, and how well do you communicate? Soft skills are really good for me, as I tell people. It's like, I have the gift of gab, I can explain, to the C level, like, Joe Beer can, with that when I have to testify in court sometimes. Like, this is how TCP/IP works. This is what it does. This is how you read it. And this is how we know the evildoer clicked on this and we did it, accepted it as well. So
I push then because we were talking about SOC analyst earlier, and that's a great entry level position.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I always push with them is that it is a lot of customer service. You have to have those soft skills. You have to be able to explain things, and you have to be able to move things up and down, right? So we are talking those executives. Those executives, they're not going to care about that TCP/IP stack. They're going to worry about risk. But then as you move down to, let's say, the VP to the senior director level, they're going to worry more about those technical levels, but not super deep because they've got to watch the forest, not the trees.
Right.
And then you've got to be able to talk technical with the people, with the technical folks. And that's where those hands-on keyboard skills come into play.
Yeah, and as I tell people, it's depending on, know your role.
Mm-hmm.
Know what they're asking for you to do. Because I mean, I report to the C-level, and they love me because I have no filter and I have no fucks to give. I don't give a shit. I yell, scream, hoot, holler, and cuss, and they love it. It's
Mm-hmm.
because they're getting the truth, and they know that because all cybersecurity, whether it be IT or OT, is based on trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that soft skill trust, as I tell people, is something we don't talk about in our industry. You can be on LinkedIn and talk about all this kind of cool stuff, right? But guess what? If you don't have the soft skills, in the way to portray what it is that you're trying to paint that little picture, it doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
And if you're introverted and you don't speak well, and it's going to be rough, you're going to have a rough road,
It can happen though. I mean, like one of my good friends, actually, it was one of my first people that I mentored, is incredibly shy. He is a complete introvert. Great hacker. I mean, probably one of the best.
Thank you for praising introverts.
Yes. And you can have that, but you've got to be able to communicate at least in a small venue. Can we
Right.
ask everyone to come on a podcast? No. Can we ask them to do public speaking? No. But you've got to be able to speak at least one-on-one with someone else, even at a super technical level.
Oh yeah, it's a given. It's a
Yes.
given. So, sir, let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you're doing right now,
Sure.
and some stuff that you want to be able to promote. Because I know education's really big, on your list. Because I mean, I looked at
Mhm.
your bio and everything, and some of the stuff that you're doing, IT, critical infrastructure. We kind of have like a little rundown. What are you doing in the industry? What is your forte? And then what is your daily driver? What are you doing every single day that you see that's happening, in the industry, that could affect critical infrastructure or IT services?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think most people know me. I am the VP of the Denver OWASP group. And my group is a little bit different than most of the OWASP group, is that we do everything. We don't do just application security. We do threat hunting, DFIR, etc.
Yeah.
We cover all of that. You've also known that I am an educator. Last night, I was actually teaching for CU Boulder. I also teach for San Diego State University as well in their, and I have 3 programs that I teach. I teach ethical hacking, DFIR, and threat hunting and intelligence. So I always focus on those. Outside of that, I am also a guest host on the Colorado Eco Security podcast, where I interview
Cool.
Colorado stars. In fact, I see in the chat that John Davis invited Jason Haddix. Jason Haddix is, I guess, a friend of mine. He was on the podcast. Among all that, though, I also have a full-time job in risk management. I work for a very large ISP, and I try to push more than check-the-box security.
Oh yeah. We just finished our audits, for the
Mhm.
fourth quarter in government before October started, and it was like, it's bad.
Yeah. Well, the question is that how do we relate that information? And I think the hardest part for all of us here is, does the upper management want to know the truth or not?
Yeah, I have no problem telling them, people that your baby's ugly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the C-level likes me, is because they would much rather know how bad is before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And at least they can have some kind of damage control, because it's a green, I tell people it's a green paper problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's money. I mean, and it's not just a little money,
Yes.
it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And especially, if you're dealing with like steam, and you're dealing with the state, and you're dealing with a building that's running off steam, and you need to change out, boilers and all this other kind of stuff, and sensors and one-way diodes, and then you got to put it on the internet for whatever reason, I don't know why. And then, all the stuff that goes with it, there's a cost to that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And we've been working, especially in the government right now, we're shut down, but we also, there are parts that are still running, and our, things that we've been dealing with is China. We've been dealing a lot with China. This past week has been rough, in the OT world, because I mean, China decided to flip the switch a little bit and turn lights on and off again, and it hurt a lot,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, how is that? And I guess that's maybe an interesting thing, is with the government shutdown, how is that affecting our critical infrastructure?
A lot.
You know, I don't actually work. I mean, I know about the critical infrastructure. Obviously, internet is a critical infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
But is that like lowering our defenses? At least, you know, because I work for a private company,
Mm-hmm.
it's not really affecting us right now, at least at this current moment.
Give it time,
Yeah.
because, you know, as I've been telling people, you know, especially on LinkedIn, I've had a lot of people hit me up on LinkedIn, like, you know, Chip, what's the problem and the issues? It's like, well, I don't know who to contact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can call that department, and, you know, if Steve's over there and Steve's been there for 20 something years and Steve's now laid off or furloughed or fired, there's no Steve that I talk to. So who's next in line? You know, that's been our biggest problem right now is, you know, who and whom do we communicate and how do we juggle those balls, right? You know, we got to keep juggling, right? You know, there's some parts of government that still have to keep going, you know, and I'm part of that part that has to keep things going. But it's like, you know, a lot of the people that we know and we contact aren't there, you
Yeah.
know, and it's been really scary, because it's like going, normally we have a list of people that we can call, you know, when shit happens. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's list is no longer valid, because it's like we're now calling literally the heads of companies, you know, going, and our C level's been really good about that. You know, it's been contacting the people, you know, in the departments like Department of Transportation and so forth in the public sector, going, hey, who do we call?
Right.
You know, and not just on 1-800 number, like physically, who do we call? And they've been, you know, digging up names and numbers for us, but it's rough. And
Yeah.
the longer this goes out, the worse
Mhm.
it's going to get, and it will, like a stone dropped, you know, into, you know, water. It's just going to trickle out, and eventually ISPs and everybody else is going to start feeling it as well, because, you know, it's the people that you've normally contacted and done business with for long periods of time, you know, are going to say, like, who and whom do we contact if we don't contact you? And then they're going to ask you who you contact on your end. And if those contacts don't exist, well,
Yeah, but what happens now is that, let's say you even do happen to get a hold of Steve, he
yeah,
doesn't have the access into the system anymore.
that's
You
right.
can't do
And
anything about it, right? Oh,
and
I'll
China
write
is
this
taking very
article.
good advantage of that right now. They're kind of
Mhm.
kicking us when we're down to
Right.
see how hard they can hit. And, you know, this week, you know, that I've been talking about China, and I'm just going to read straight from, you know, Chinese hackers exposed the ARC, you know, Genesis servers to, you know, that they have a back door that's been sitting there for over a year. You know, you've got Volt Typhoon, Flax Typhoon that's been happening, you know, and they're literally going back to old Java you know, exploits, and they're living off the land. You
So
know,
this is the ideal time now for cyber warfare adversaries to conduct cyber warfare on American infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's I agree, because we, like John's or like Chip said, kick us when we're down, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah, kick us when we're down, cook us when we are being hurt the most right now. And the worst part is that, especially with the news this morning, it doesn't sound like it's going to be resolved anytime soon.
no, it is not. And, you know, we try to stay out of politics on this.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't want to talk about politics, but some of that bleeds into some of the decisions that are actually being made right now, unfortunately. And I don't like it, but I mean, that's part of what I deal with working with the government. You know,
You're much less of a CISA now, right?
yeah, it's kind of like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, do I really want to step my toe into this water, you know, of dealing with this political mess? But sometimes you got to, you
Yeah.
know, someone has to, as I say, speak truth to power, right?
And
It's like,
you know, it's funny. I get asked that in my classes, especially now, is like, how is that affecting? And I have to be very careful, because we got to keep the politics out of it.
yep,
But like you said, it affects things that we're doing right now. But as you know, people get very heated up about that. When I was teaching in the physical classroom at the Colorado community colleges out here, I had to physically separate people and call security about this.
Wow.
They were so
whoa,
fired up. They were like ready to go fist to fist on this. And it's like, stop. That has nothing to do with class. And I had
yeah.
to pull them out and say, you guys need to go talk to them right there.
Yeah, I was a adjunct professor at Remington Technical College for 3 years. When I got back
Mhm.
from Afghanistan, I just needed side money to help pay for medical bills, because
Yeah.
I'd been shot, stabbed, blown up, all kinds of things happened in war. But, at Remington, you would tell them when I would teach, the hacking class, the certified
Mhm.
ethical hacker, exam. This is back when it was version 9. I don't know what version it's going up to now. But, it was like, hey, what we're learning in class today, kids, can be used for good or ill. It's just
Mhm.
depending on intent. And when I started working with lawyers and stuff and started doing, started my own LLC, and I started working with, companies, that were in the legal world, lawyers love me. Hey, love, it's like, wow, you're a certified ethical hacker. Can you prove this in a court of law? And I'm like, well, yeah, you
Mhm.
know, data doesn't lie.
Yes.
People do.
Data
And
wins arguments. Data
yeah,
wins arguments. Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you when they clicked on, ABC 123, and then how that can be used for good or ill. It's just the intent of what they're trying to do with it. And that's one of the things that, we don't talk a lot about. I think it's like a dirty little secret, in the hacker community is ethics and
Mhm.
morality.
Yes.
We don't talk about that a lot. We don't talk about the humanities part of what it is that we deal with and the fallout, that can happen from that. And then, um, as I tell people, when we start looking at exploits and 0 days and all these wonderful, horrible things, like what is the trickle effect that happens to the people, and the users? Because I mean, we've actually, as all hackers do, as I tell people from the Hacker Manifesto, it was written. Wait, Ken, what was the Hacker Manifesto written? That was long. I mean, it's been a long time ago.
90s,
Yeah, like
1990s, maybe?
90s, but there's a certain code of conduct that we kind of have forgotten over the years, and the morality that that we actually had back in the 90s. Like, we're not doing this for evil. We're doing this to improve. We're doing this to make it. That's what hackers do. They take things apart, they figure out what it all does, and then they put it back together in the best way of how it's going to work for them. That's what I used to teach people.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I absolutely agree with you. Although I have to disagree with you on one small part. Disagree respectfully, is that in the Hacker Manifesto we would do stuff more ethically. Now I think that with society, right, nothing to do with politics, we are finding it more acceptable to do bad stuff, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but I'm just saying that in society, it's like, well, if I only take 2 credit card numbers, or if I, if I only do so much, and you try to justify it, and people are finding it more acceptable.
well, I can't. It's kind of like saying, you're either a little pregnant or you're just committing a little bit of fraud. If you're stealing only 2 credit card numbers, you're still committing fraud. It's still
Yes.
illegal. So, yeah, I kind of see the balancing act of what you're saying, but I think that we've kind of lost our way in a sense, not all
Yes.
the way, but because
Mhm.
there's old school hackers, like Chris Roberts, that have been
Mhm.
around forever, and I don't really like to name drop, but it's like, we've had these debates before.
Oh yeah, Chris was actually a keynote speaker and a friend of mine.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
we,
I've known Chris for a long time,
yep.
and I've had serious debates, with him and Ryan Colter and a couple of different people about, when we look at risk and vulnerability and threats and all this kind of stuff, right? It all boils down to the user, right? Are we
Mhm.
protecting the company? Are we protecting the user? Are we protecting the data? Are we protecting the infrastructure? You know, what are we doing to, and is it going to come to an effect, cause effect, cause effect, cause effect all day long? And we've had serious debates, I mean, long, serious cigar, whiskey drinking, coffee drinking sessions on porches, talking
Mhm.
about these things of the morality and some of the things that we have to deal with, and then how it affects us. And I've been talking about a lot about that, and that's the one thing I tell students is like, you need to have an outlet. The
Yeah.
internet is not a very friendly place. It
No.
can take you to some dark, evil things, and I've had to deal with child pornography cases, and murder for hire cases and a lot of evil stuff. And I tell like, students, like, you need to have a hobby. You need to like touch grass, as Kim says. She actually
Mhm.
is, got some social groups that she's a member of. Is that correct, Kim?
Yeah. We had a go to the park and read books and drink session on the weekend.
That's cool. I mean, like, you need to unplug and get away from all this stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes go play Dungeons and Dragons if that's your thing. I'm a Warhammer 40K guy, so my studio, I paint, and airbrush, and try to keep my hands busy and everything. And my wife loves it. She loves it. She's like, I would much rather have you blow your money on toys, than hookers and blow, and she laughs about it, but it's true. She's like going, yeah. And we're a gun family, so we have lots of guns. We shoot and target shoot and everything. And my wife is former Israeli Special Forces, so I don't argue with her when she says she's going to the range. I'm like, sweetheart, you can put the pink one in your purse. That's fine. Here's the extra ammo. Have at it.
Do you have like a big backyard and lots of dummies and targets and stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, people laugh about it, but it's like, there's a gun on my desk. Yeah. I'm kind of Hunter S. Thompson, so I got a 357 Magnum here on my desk, just in case somebody tries to break in. But I laugh about that. But people, they get all scared and all uppity about it. But it's like, look, everybody's got a hobby. My wife loves target shooting. She's worked with special forces. She's done all this kind of stuff, and she really enjoys it. And that's she's also trained SWAT teams for things.
Well, so I got a friend at work. Well, I got a friend at work that. She's really big into books, and that has pushed me back into just sitting down and reading a physical book. I am also, though, a good gun enthusiast, right? I am a U.S. Marine, as you can see in my background there. There you go. Yeah, I am a U.S. Marine. I just bought a Vector Chris as well. But going back to the cybersecurity part within that ethical hacking, it's interesting because when I teach the ethical hacking, they, of course, go with the black hat, the gray hats, and the white hat. And for one thing, I cross out the white hat and I say, they're really just pen testers, right? they're just following the rules. And John, I keep calling you John for some reason, but I know that there are people in here that have had this struggle where you've seen something vulnerable in a pen test and you're like, oh, I so want to go after that, but it's not in scope. It's not within those rules of engagement.
I call it caveats. Hey, by the way, your WordPress is completely open and the cybersecurity for it sucks. We just saw it, it's the same thing. I was doing a pen test one time and they gave us a range of IPs to test, right? And we ran across the, and this is back in the Exchange days, to where you could actually go into your Exchange via remote from a web session, and they laughed about it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like going, yeah, one of the IPs that you gave us is for the police department, just so you know, here it is. Here's the screenshots and everything. This is how you could remotely telnet into, the police department, and they haven't changed the admin password yet. So I want y'all to know.
I was doing an authorized test on a server, multi-tenant. I found out that they had the client ID in the URL. Found out that they were able to change it. And I was told it was a test server. So as a test, I put an automation in there, downloaded, I think 10 records out of each account. Then realized, this is not a test server. This is a live server. And by the way, one of the clients is the U.S. Army.
Oopsie.
Yeah, that did not play out well.
The feds don't like it when you hit their stuff without them not knowing.
Yeah, especially when you download records from them.
That could be immediate criminal charges, definitely.
Yeah, I've had that happen where I've had the U.S. Marshals knock on my door with a subpoena, and because they know not to show up at my house without a warrant. And I'm like going, hi there, what are you, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing my damn job. What are you doing? And they're like, why did you go to blah, 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 blah? And I said, because you're paying me to do this test. So your lack of communication doesn't understand, and your CAG, Command Operations Group, you're former military like myself, your Command Operations Group needs to disseminate exactly what it is for your RFP, because guess what? Y'all told me to go do this. I'm doing my job. Here's the requisition of orders right here. And they're like, oh, okay, that's fine. Nobody told us.
Not a dumb question, because I've been thinking what they've been talking about in the EU Parliament, and they've had to fight in the EU Parliament the idea that law enforcement should always have a backdoor to all encryption, chat control, and all that. So it makes me wonder, one of the main bits of advice that I give ordinary people about their cybersecurity posture is a controversial one, which is Tor is a very good choice for VPN, in my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what do you ever see like the US government like making using Tor a crime and then targeting people who connect to certain IP addresses or whatever?
I've not heard of that, and I've not heard of that at all. I mean, and because I haven't heard of it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, and for viewers that don't know what Tor is a browser that has a VPN that's built into it, and it's built
I'm
on
talking about the proxy network.
Yeah, and it has a proxy network and so forth. And the history of Tor, it was created by the U.S. Department of Navy, for them for embassies that are overseas to transfer data to the United States, mostly SQL data. But it was one of those things like I don't see the government eating their own. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I mean, there's no problems using Tor. I mean, I've got a government laptop right here. It's got it on it. So I mean,
but what if they criminalize it? I'm sure people will find a way to evade that, but that's something I genuinely worry about.
Well, it's kind of the same thing. Apple's not going to build a backdoor into their operating system, and that's a healthy debate, that I've talked about many a time. Why would vendors introduce a problem into their operating system and whether it be phones or whatnot? Why would they create a backdoor just for the government? Because if somebody gets a hold of that government information, which the government's not that good at holding data, sometimes they leak a lot of it. But if that backdoor was exposed, let's say to a foreign power, like you're saying, Kim, wow, that's bad.
Yeah. And by the way, just to kind of bring it back around, that backdoor, that government, how well is it protected now that they're on furlough?
Yeah.
As Bruce Schneider says, the moment that you introduce a backdoor to any encryption system, you have, I'm not quoting him very well, but any backdoor renders any encryption basically useless. And most software security controls rely on encryption. So
I'm going to go the way of Richard Stallman. No.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it. No, sorry. I mean, and making it illegal, Kim, I think is a very healthy debate. Because if you go to some countries and you have Tor on your computer, you get arrested. Like you take it to China, you're in trouble. You take it to Iran, you're really in trouble. You're probably dead. You take it to Egypt, same thing. I mean, we saw this during the Arab Spring. People were communicating and they tried to cut the communications. And guess what? They were using Tor, to basically, communicate, considering their entire DNS and, ICANN structure had been ripped out of, the internet, and they turned it off, So it was kind of weird when they turned off the internet. I mean, they were still working on dial-up POTS lines, modems, but guess what they were using? They were using Tor the entire time. So, and even the government then came back and said that's illegal, but guess what? People are still going to use it, create a black market. I mean,
I wonder if people can exploit a technicality. And, I'm using I2P actually.
Yeah.
We didn't exclusively ban I2P, just Tor.
But here's the question though: if they start doing it with Tor, where are they going to stop? Are they going to make Kali illegal?
Yeah, are they going to go for like Telegram? I mean, are they going to go for? I mean, once that floodgate opens, I
had this weird thing. I actually presented it at the last DEF CON at the Red Team Village. I think it was quite an honor. But I had these dreams of DEF CON being raided by the federal government, and obviously it didn't happen. But
they send agents because we have a spot the Fed game. When I was a goon, we'd have spot the Fed because we know the agencies are going to send operatives in to recruit. And I mean, I was working. I was already working for the NSA and the CIA, and I was, and it's like so funny. It's like I knew people that were, with the agency because I could see their laptops and I knew they were, they're carrying around MacBooks. And it's like if you can figure out who it is that's carrying the MacBooks that works for the agency, congratulations, you've already spotted them. They might look like normal Joe Schmo, dressed in black kind of hacker, but guess what? If they're carrying a MacBook and they speak a certain way, you can get on your kill meter really quick on. Yeah, I know this guy's got a body count. He's Fed.
It's funny though. At the last DEF CON, now 33. Now that there's at the convention center, I actually didn't see a lot of black hoodies. I saw a lot of crazy shirts. Somebody walking around in a ballerina unicorn information, thing. I was like, huh, the culture has changed a bit.
Yeah, and the thing though too is I'm going to go ahead and approach this with you because we always do this with everybody that's on the show. Your feelings on cybersecurity now for AI, hacking at AI and scale, and then how we're going to start handling the AI problem, within infrastructure and in cybersecurity because it's not going away anytime soon.
No.
And what's your feelings on it, sir?
Oh boy, I think that we need about another 3 hours to go and talk and debate, and some whiskey definitely in that case. But I would say is that we have to embrace it. We have to look at it. It's in there. I mean, we cannot block it anymore. As much as we try to block it, as much as we try to deny it, it's there. As far as getting it into our infrastructure, because we know that while we have Chat GBT, there's what, evil Chat GBT now, or bad.
Oh yeah, I mean we're still dealing with Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon. And we know it's China,
Right.
and and we know it's Russia, and we know it's Iran, and we know and I tell people it's the BRICS nations now. It's the ones that don't like us that are part of the BRICS nations that are really kind of hitting us, because it's gone beyond let's just test thresholds. It's now gone to and we've crossed the Rubicon on this, with Stuxnet. Now we can, let's hit the infrastructure and see what it does and see what we can, take out.
I'm amazed that the U.S. and Israel eventually admitted to Stuxnet, quite honestly.
Yeah, it took them a while, but yeah, we had, yeah.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm sorry, I know you're talking about AI, but I had a great question asked last night, and they said, so do you think that all these threats are always coming in from foreign nations? Are they always coming from outside of the U.S.? And I said, yeah, I see you shaking your head. I said the same exact thing. I said, no, well, yes, I think that's still true. I think there's a portion of it. But I think a lot of the bad people that are doing stuff to our infrastructure are here in the United States, and they are not those illegals or anything like that. They are probably the, Caucasian middle class person.
Oh no, I'll say it. I mean, it is literally vehement racist, in-house terrorist groups. Started in California. You had a white nationalist group that was shooting at a power grid with, automatic weapons that took out, a huge block of area of San Diego because they were having, a protest for gay and lesbians and Pride Week. So they took out the infrastructure, with just basic guns shooting at it, at the coolers, to basically cause it to overheat and shut down. Okay. We've seen this multiple times in the United States where we have vehement racist, in-house, in-country terrorist groups that are labeled by the Southern Poverty Law Institute as, white nationalist, groups that the first thing they do, they attack the infrastructure. They attack the power, right? Because there's something going on in the city, either a protest or some kind of event or whatnot. So what's the first thing they want to do? Kill the power, right? So go blow up a substation. We've seen this multiple times that have happened inside the continental United States. And it's not like Al Qaeda or Hamas, or somebody like that. It's actually people in the United States that just want to take down the government. They have very centralized views on politics and race and so forth, the things that we don't like to talk about. But guess what? They are all for it, and they want to cause as much harm and ill as they possibly can inside the country. And they're Americans that are doing that.
And I do have to expand a little bit on that. And I would say it's not just within hatred of the government. I think that there are going to be people that are doing it just because it's there, just because they can. And they may have no political affiliation at all, no political drive. They just like, you know what, we're going to do this because we can do it. And not just shooting at things, but, oh, well, look at this website. Look at this infrastructure. Let's try this Nmap. Oh, here's a port that's open. Let's try a couple default passwords. And we've run into that. I mean, in my OWASP group, we've had people talk to a lot of the medical groups saying, you've left admin and password on your cameras, on your entertainment system. Why is it still there?
Low-hanging fruit, still fruit. And that's the thing is, I've been, preaching about is like, if it's informational or it's low and it's showing up in Sentinel or it's showing up in Defender, it's there for a damn reason, right? I mean, if you just look at what Microsoft has done over the past couple days, I mean, just this patch Tuesday, they did 183 security patches and 5 0 days. So those CVEs that came out, 8 of them are non-Microsoft related, but who cares? 17 of them are related to critical, and moderate, patches that have to be done, and a lot of these CVEs that we're looking at are going back to older systems for remote execution, living off the land, the DDoS attacks. So, as I tell people, Microsoft makes these things for a reason and they put them out there is because they know that the bad guys and the evildoers are going to use them against you.
Absolutely. But here's the question. How many have actually patched since then? I mean, I know it's patch Tuesday, but how many have patched? And then if they do, how successful are they?
Right.
Right. I mean, yes, okay, we've got 50,000 servers to patch. We push the patch out. Are you really looking at those reports and making sure that the patch took place?
Right. And then did you run your software, whatever you may be using, whatever flavor it may be, against that to test it? Right. Because my team, we do a lot of threat hunting. Oh my God, we do threat hunting like you wouldn't believe. And it goes into vulnerability management, and it goes into an IPAM, and it goes into a patch management program. And this week, for us has not only been the Microsoft patches, but it's been WordPress patches. And Kim and I can tell you, we've experienced a lot of people that have had problems with WordPress because it's kind of like the Microsoft of the internet for publishing, books and websites and so forth. And it's like, hey, these fuckers haven't updated their code in 5 years. What's that tell you? So you might want to go look at your shit that's out there. You make sure it's secure, because these patches, most people don't apply and think about it when it comes to WordPress.
Almost all of these CMSs are open source, right? So there returns the debate of, is open source code more secure than proprietary code or not?
Yeah. It's funny though. I was reading one of those CWEs yesterday, and there was a big panic about that. And I was like, yeah, but if you really read the CWE, let's not panic about it, because there's like misset permissions, right? We haven't set the permissions. It was a Microsoft vulnerability. It was one of those 0 days, but it's like, well, if you left your permissions open.
Yeah.
Have we not learned in the last 20 years not to default and open things up to the world?
I tell any company, if you want to see a nightmare and start, a conversation talking about cybersecurity and data theft and all things, go scan for open file shares. And then look at your SharePoint, and how a dumping ground it's turned into. The one that got me this week was, and this is just my own little rant, was there was a woman that put her episiotomy video on her fucking personal computer at work. I'm like, why in the hell would you do that? Why? Lady, I mean, I know you love your kid and all, but why would you bring that or just even stream that on video at a work computer? I mean, really? I was like going, Jesus, this is crazy. But anyway, we wrote her up, got to do the thing, HR gets involved, and then it goes from there. But it's like, wouldn't you just think twice? Just put it through your brain. Is this a good idea? I mean, before just seriously. I mean, that's like saying, you're a Saudi prince and I'm going to give you $1 billion if you click on this link. I mean, like, did you just think for a second?
I'm still recovering. I think I need to go get some Pepto-Bismol, because you said open shares and scanning for them. And honestly, I think my stomach is really, really upset.
Yeah. But if you want your shit to curdle in your lower intestine, go out there and scan for open file shares. Go out there and
stop playing that, Chip. I'm about to. I think I need to really go take some Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah, it'll make you sick. And then you look at your SharePoint and you're like going, "Oh my God, what are these people putting on here?" And then you start really, then I call it the hacker trigger. You start thinking like, okay, that's an exploit, this is bad, oh shit, this is horrible, and then you're like, what do we do? Right?
Yeah.
What do we do?
Is FTP still a useful entry point into an enterprise network?
Absolutely. Oh, no doubt.
Because there's like no reason why there should be FTP.
Right. And the thing though too is, if you're a Microsoft shop like the government is, you automatically have OneDrive, whether you like it or not. You automatically got Teams, whether you like it or not. you have Office 365 shoved up your ass, whether you like it or not. And there's nothing that you can do to stop it because you're like going, wow, this is the only way that this organization communicates with each other. They have drank the Kool-Aid and a lot of it. But what would you go to? Like, would we go back to Domino servers, and Lotus 123? I mean, like, if we can't use Exchange and Office 365,
LibreOffice. I've already been
LibreOffice,
advising people to use LibreOffice,
Yeah.
and there's software that you can install on a web server that
Yeah.
can be used like Google Drive.
I mean, you can use Teams in Ubuntu, or however you want to say it. I mean, it's like, it just drives
If I
me.
was making the decision, there would be no Microsoft applications. It would all be LibreOffice and a bunch of other alternatives.
Yeah,
Like
but
Yeah, I
Tim, you
mean,
know as well as I do, that's not going to work.
it's not going to work. I
Yeah.
mean, it'd be in a utopia, it'd be great.
Yes.
Oh my God, it'd be great.
Well,
But
in a
it's like,
utopia, we wouldn't even have any applications, and we'd all be sitting on the beach with Chris Roberts drinking whiskey. But
yeah, or he'd be like in my front porch smoking cigars with Ryan Colter. I got actually Ryan Colter, who's been a friend of mine for a long period of time, been a hacker buddy for years. Was used on the shit show that was, that they used to do before they got shut down, and whatnot. Um, he came down. He was actually, coming down to New Orleans and was doing some stuff down there. And he decided to take the little trip, to see where I live, in my state, which is still kind of, we don't really talk about where I live. But, he came and saw me. We smoked cigars and talked about cybersecurity on the front porch and some of the stuff that we've been talking about for like decades.
you're going to have to tell me where you live, though, Chip, because you said cigars and whiskey. I'm on my way over right after the show, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, as I tell people that, I firm believer that we should not have a filter in
your
cybersecurity.
opportunity to disclose your real state to Frank Victory is soon because it's now the end of the show, I think.
Yeah, and sir, first off, thank you so very much for coming. Great discussion today. Kim, anything that you want to go ahead and plug?
Not right now, but probably soonish. I'm working on my digital safety book, so
Awesome.
when it gets closer to publication time for that, then I'll start plugging it.
Well, I have good news. I'm in paperback. So if anybody wants to go and look at what I've been talking about and doing for the past 20 years, I finally got, the CIA, NSA, NTSB, DOD, and DOJ to let me actually release a book. So
Wow.
I'm working on the hardcover right now. So I'm self-publishing from Amazon. So you can find, the Cyber War on Critical Infrastructure by me on Amazon and Kindle right now. So I'm working on the hardcover, and my editor came back to me and said, hey, everybody wants you to do another book. And I'm like going, okay, I can do it. So I'm now started working on a PG. Well, I'm going to say it. They make me put a parental advisory sticker on it because they know how much I yell, scream, and cuss, hoot, and holler. So I'm working on the second book, which actually will have a parental advisory sticker on it, which I think is hilarious. I look at it as like a badge of success, that I've actually done this. So I'm working on a second book now, and my editor and my publisher thinks it's hysterical that the government's going to make me put a rating system on my book.
I'm going to buy it. I'm going to be first in line to buy it. Yeah. So I guess maybe if it's okay for my turn, we do have the Denver OWASP Snowfrock, so snowfrock.com. We have our conference coming up 26th and 27th of March.
Now, for some other people, is it going to be virtual as well, or is it going to be in person only?
In person only. We only do in person to promote that networking. This is going to be the first time that we do a 2-day conference, so it's possible that we fall flat on our face on this one. But we have that coming up on March, I think 26th and 27th here in the Denver area. Personally, I'm going again up to University of Michigan for a cyber symposium. And talking about not having a filter and making people mad, Chip, I'm going to be speaking at B-Sides Colorado Springs on the 25th called Reframing the Pyramid of Pain for Defenders. And it's going to be talking about the pain we feel as defenders in trying to change things in corporate America.
Chris Wiley's tried to take on this subject before.
Okay.
And I've done it as well. And it's like, and if you want to explain the pyramid of pain, we can do that on another show because we'd love to have you back. it is really funny when you start talking about some of these things, because it's like the same thing I've said about password issues. We've been fighting password issues for 30 years and shit, we still ain't got it fixed yet.
I am doing the vaudeville thing with the cane, where I'm like throwing the cane at you. And, I remember vaudeville, even though I was born after vaudeville ended, but I'm vaudevilling right now. So vaudeville cane out.
Well, that is awesome that you're going to be talking about that. That's a subject for another show.
Yep.
Thank you so very much for coming today. Thank you, and
Thank you for having me.
Hope anybody that's listening to this show will make your events and definitely see you, and talk to you. And that is basically all that we have for the day. Thank you so very much, sir. Kim, my Gothic princess, my Gothic beauty. I love you so much.
I agree with that part.
I
Definitely. You're so beautiful.
See you next week, everyone.
See ya.